In 1810, Biloxi's population was counted at just 420. A year later, after a century of French, British, and Spanish rule, Mississippi became the 20th state in the Union, and Biloxi began to grow. As Biloxi became a popular summer resort, the Mississippi Gulf Coast became known as the American Riviera. By mid-century, Biloxi had become the most important of the Gulf Coast's resort towns. Then, in 1861, Mississippi seceded from the United States. The Civil War had begun. After the war, recovery along the Gulf Coast was slow, but picked up momentum with the arrival of the railroad in the 1870s. Tourists began to return, and distant markets were opened up for a burgeoning new industry, seafood. By 1904, Biloxi was known as the seafood capital of the world. With the demand for labor high, Polish, Acadian French, and Slavic workers came to work in Biloxi's seafood industry. As the seafood and timber industries boomed, this rich mix of cultures was joined by Greeks, Irish, Italians, African Americans, and after the late 1970s, Vietnamese. A wide variety of traditions were born of this diversity. Through the decades, many cultural organizations have regularly held celebrations with contests, food, music, and dance. Mardi Gras, the oldest and most popular celebration, began in 1891. It was held sporadically until 1908, when it became an annual event, with the crowning of the first king, d'Iberville, and Queen Ixalib, Biloxi spelled backwards.
I've known Mardi Gras all my life, and we were always getting prepared. And then on Tuesday morning is when all the excitement and fun began. My daddy would get up at the crack of dawn, we'd load his car, and then he would go out to the boat for King d'Iberville Landing. And then, of course, my mother and my sister and I, we were in charge of the maids and the queen.
For many years, the Biloxi Firemen's Parade, now known as the Biloxi Firefighters' Day Parade, was Biloxi's second most popular event. In 1888, with Biloxi's seafood industry thriving, the first schooner races were held. The races, a weekly event, gained national attention and were held until 1933. Overflow crowds cheered from the Biloxi Yacht Club as the white-winged queens vied for the winning prize, a keg of beer. From 1922 to 1934, the Biloxi Elks Club sponsored a 4th of July celebration that featured bathing beauty contests and sailing races. Sailing regattas were held throughout the summer, some lasting for several days. As in antebellum days, hotels offered boat excursions up the rivers and to the islands, aboard boats like the Pan American Clipper, and later the catboat Gigi, designed and built by Henry Fountain of Biloxi. In the 1950s, Biloxi eccentric John R. Guillot, known as the Hermit of Deer Island, would row out to meet the excursion boat Sailfish, where he would serenade the tourists on board. Since 1929, the annual blessing of the fleet has been held at the beginning of the shrimping season. As the decorated boats pass in parade, the Catholic priest blesses each one and prays for the safety of the fishermen and for a good catch. And since 1948, the annual deep-sea fishing rodeo has attracted anglers from all over the coast to compete for cash prizes. During the early 20th century, Biloxi continued to grow. Electricity, a street railway system, and telephone service were added. A paved highway was built along the beach, and in 1928, a new seawall was dedicated. More hotels were constructed as tourism increased. After World War II, Biloxi once again became a popular vacation destination. Keesler Army Airfield had survived demobilization to become Keesler Air Force Base, and as other bases closed, Keesler's population grew. Engineers transformed Highway 90 into a 4-lane highway, and at the same time, sand was pumped from the Sound to form a 300-foot sloping beach as a buffer to the seawall. The white sand beach quickly became a tourist attraction for those coming in droves on the new superhighway. New motels, restaurants, and nightclubs sprang up along the beachfront.
My most vivid memory of coming down that beach highway was on a Saturday night, and it was sheer lights. It was the Broadway of Mississippi. There were so many places. Music abounded here on the coast.
Two well-known spots were Gus Stevens' Seafood Restaurant and Lounge and the Cabana Beach Motel's Fiesta Lounge. Stevens booked big-name entertainers. and some entertainers who were relatively unknown at the time.
The first star that I really remember was Dave Gardner. He was sort of the Southern Lenny Bruce. He, in his heyday, would draw more people into the nightclub than any other performer. There was standing room only when Dave performed. There were others like Mamie Van Doren and Jerry Van Dyke and Jane Mansfield, of course, and then Gene Warren, the Four Mints. So there are a lot of people that actually started on the coast here. There are many singing groups that began with Dad. Tex Ritter sang at Dad's restaurant, Mickey Gilley, Elvis Presley. Actually, Dad met him and told him he would never make it in the business.
Size Place, an inland nightclub popular with the locals, brought in Hank Williams Sr., the just-beginning Elvis Presley, and Jerry Lee Lewis, who, in keeping with his onstage style, practically tore up the piano. During this time, Jimmy Love Jr. began marketing his White House and Buena Vista hotels as potential convention centers. Others followed his lead, and Biloxi became a convention destination as well as a mecca for tourists. Then, in 1969, Hurricane Camille wrought destruction on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. In the wake of the storm, the people picked themselves up and began to rebuild. Biloxi's economy recovered slowly until 1992, when the state of Mississippi legalized dockside gaming, igniting the biggest economic boom in Biloxi's history. Then, in August 2005, Hurricane Katrina brought all of that to a standstill. Katrina hit the Mississippi Gulf Coast with high winds, heavy rains, and a 26.5-foot storm surge, causing massive damage to the area and killing 53 people. 5,000 businesses and homes in Biloxi were destroyed. As they had throughout history, the people of Biloxi would gather the strength to rebuild. The Beau Rivage reopened just 1 year to the day after Katrina. Today, Biloxi is once again a major vacation destination, offering a wealth of outdoor activities, outstanding seafood, and casino gambling.
Welcome to Biloxi.